There's a wall standing in central Italy that was poured in the year 126 Anno Domini, 19 centuries ago. It has survived earthquakes, fires, 2 world wars, acid rain, and the freeze-thaw cycles of 1900 winters. The American Society for Testing and Materials says the modern concrete in your foundation has an expected service life of 50 to 100 years. Roman concrete walls have already lasted 300 times longer than that. And in the United States today, you cannot legally build a residential structural wall using the original Roman formula. Not because it does not work, because it works too well. Let me show you what they buried. The wall I'm talking about is the Pantheon in Rome. Its dome, made of unreinforced ancient concrete, is the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. Larger than anything we have built in 2,000 years using modern Portland cement. The interior has never collapsed. The exterior has never been re-skinned. Soldiers have lit fires inside it. Vandals have struck it. Time has done what time does. The wall does not care. And the Pantheon is not the only one. The markets of Trajan are still standing. The Colosseum is still standing, despite being quarried for stone by every generation that came after Rome fell. The harbors at Caesarea Maritima are still underwater in the Mediterranean, where concrete piers poured by Herod the Great in the 1st century before Christ continue to hold their shape against 2,000 years of salt and tide. Modern marine engineers consider this impossible. The Romans did it without rebar, without computers, without inspection. They had a formula. They wrote it down. And somewhere between 1500 and 1900, the trade lost the recipe. In 2023, researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Harvard University, and laboratories in Italy and Switzerland published a study in the journal Science Advances. Lead author Admir Masic, professor of civil and environmental engineering at MIT. They examined a 2,000-year-old wall in the ancient city of Privernum, about 43 kilometers from Rome. What they found was a property that has no modern equivalent. The wall heals itself, not metaphorically, literally. When water enters a crack in Roman concrete, it triggers a chemical reaction with small white inclusions called lime clasts. Those clasts had been dismissed for 2 centuries by Western archaeologists as sloppy mixing, evidence that the Romans were not careful. The MIT team proved the opposite. The lime clasts are the entire point. They are deliberate. They are what gives the wall its 300-year capability. Here is how it works. The Romans did something the modern construction industry abandoned around the year 1900. They used quicklime instead of slaked lime, and they mixed it at high temperature. The trade calls this hot mixing. When quicklime meets water and volcanic ash at high temperature, it produces an exothermic reaction. The mixture reaches close to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. That heat creates compounds that simply cannot form in cold mixed concrete. The lime clasts that remain inside the cured wall are not waste. They are dormant, a reservoir of calcium waiting to be triggered. Engineers call this latent reactivity. The Romans called it normal building practice. Either way, the wall they poured in the year 126 is still doing the same job today that it was doing the week it was finished. The chemistry has not aged. Let me tell you a quick story. Ron is 58, lives outside Sandpoint, Idaho. Carpenter for 40 years, built his current cabin himself. 7 acres. Off-grid for 9 years now. His wife Janet passed in 2017. His kids are grown and on the coast. When he went off-grid, he had the basics handled. Solar, water from the well, wood heat. But the cabin was poured on a standard Portland cement slab. And by year 3, he saw the cracks. Hairline at first, then visible. Idaho winters are brutal on a slab. A contractor in town quoted him $11,000 to break out the perimeter and pour a new footing. Ron did not have $11,000. A friend in town, a woman who had grown up Mennonite, gave him the documentation as a gift. Ron read the section on traditional masonry twice. He found a chapter on the original lime-based mortars that predated Portland cement in American construction by a century. Mortars his great-grandfather would have recognized. The documentation explained the formula: hydrated lime, local sand. A reactive ash substitute he could source from a quarry 40 minutes away. The ratios, the mixing temperature, the cure time. Ron mixed his first batch in the spring of 2024. He patched the cracks himself. That was 2 years ago. The cracks have not returned. The lime-based patch is harder now than when he poured it, because that is what these binders do. They keep curing for years. He spent under $60 in materials. The complete documentation costs less than what Ron would have spent on 1 bag of structural epoxy from the hardware store. 7 days money-back guarantee. Link in the description. When the grid fails, knowledge doesn't. Back to the video. Continuing. What Ron discovered, the chemists at MIT confirmed in a laboratory. What the laboratory confirmed, the Roman engineers wrote down in the 1st century. And what the Roman engineers wrote down is what the American building code has spent 100 years not approving. 3 layers of the same knowledge, each one rediscovering what the layer below it already had. Now let me ask the question that matters. If this material is so superior, why is your house not built with it? The answer is in 3 parts. The first part is the volcanic ash. The Romans used a specific volcanic ash called pozzolana from the Bay of Naples. It is the active mineral component that makes the chemistry work. Pozzolana is geographically specific. Most of the world does not have access to it. But here is what the trade does not advertise. Equivalent reactive ashes exist on 6 continents. Fly ash from coal plants, calcined clay, volcanic deposits in the Pacific Northwest, in Mexico, in Iceland, in Indonesia. The chemistry works with any sufficiently reactive aluminosilicate. Pozzolana is convenient. It is not unique. The second part is the building code. In 1904, the American Society for Testing and Materials began issuing standards for Portland cement. By 1920, Portland cement had become the only legal binder in most American building codes for structural concrete. Roman-style, hot-mixed concrete using natural pozzolana or pozzolana substitutes was not banned outright. It was simply not approved. And in American construction law, not approved means you cannot get a permit for it. You cannot get an inspection. You cannot get insurance on a structure built with it, which means, in practical terms, you cannot legally build with it. The International Building Code, which most American counties adopt, requires structural concrete to meet ASTM C150 for Portland cement. Roman formula concrete does not meet that standard, not because it is weaker, because the standard was written around Portland cement chemistry. Anything else is by definition non-compliant. The third part is the one that no one in the industry will say out loud. Portland cement is a product. A wall that has to be replaced every 50 to 100 years is a product line. A wall that lasts 300 years is a product that gets sold once. And the construction industry in the United States represents over $2 trillion annually. When a crack forms in the wall 50 years later, or 100 years later, or 1,000 years later, water enters the crack. The water reaches a lime clast. The clast dissolves into a calcium-saturated solution. That solution flows through the crack. And then it does something modern concrete cannot do. It recrystallizes as calcium carbonate. It fills the crack from the inside. The wall repairs itself. In 2023, the MIT team replicated the formula in their lab. They poured a modern Roman-style sample, fractured it on purpose, ran water through the crack with a flow meter measuring the leak rate. Within 30 days, the water stopped flowing. The crack was sealed by a wall that had supposedly cured years earlier. Compare that to modern Portland cement. A crack in your foundation does not heal. A crack in your foundation widens every winter as water freezes inside it. The repair industry calls this freeze-thaw damage. The American Concrete Institute considers it the primary cause of structural concrete failure in northern climates. Your foundation has an expiration date. The Pantheon does not. Now, let me show you what is inside a Roman wall that the modern industry will not duplicate. The first ingredient is the binder. Quicklime, also called calcium oxide, made by heating limestone to around 1500 degrees Fahrenheit in a kiln. The Romans had kilns. You can still buy quicklime today. Most agricultural supply stores carry it. The second ingredient is a reactive aluminosilicate. The Romans used pozzolana. You can use fly ash from a coal plant. You can use calcined kaolin clay. You can use ground volcanic glass. The third ingredient is aggregate. Crushed stone, gravel, or in the case of Roman bunker walls, broken pottery and tuff. The fourth ingredient is water, added at the right moment. And the fifth ingredient is not actually an ingredient at all. It is heat. The reaction has to run hot. That is the part that the modern industry does not do. Modern Portland cement is mixed at ambient temperature. The aggregate is cold. The water is cold. The cement is cold. The result is cold concrete. Cold concrete cures quickly, which is convenient on a job site, but it never develops the high temperature mineral phases that give Roman concrete its longevity. The Romans mixed their concrete hot, sometimes deliberately adding quicklime that was still warm from the kiln, and they poured it while the exothermic reaction was still releasing heat. The cure took weeks, not days, but the wall they left behind has lasted 19 centuries. A standard residential foundation poured this year in the United States has a design service life of 50 to 100 years, per the American Concrete Institute publication ACI 364. Some structures in salt air or freeze-thaw environments fail in 25 years. The Pantheon is 1,800 years old and the dome has not been re-poured. The math is not subtle. Now here is the part that affects you whether you build a wall or not. The Portland cement industry produces approximately 8% of all global carbon dioxide emissions, more than every airliner combined. The reason is the production process. Turning limestone into Portland clinker releases the carbon that limestone has been holding for geological time. Roman concrete, in contrast, absorbs carbon dioxide over its lifetime. The lime clasts and the surrounding matrix slowly carbonate, pulling CO2 out of the air and locking it into the wall. A wall that lasts 3 centuries and absorbs carbon is, by any reasonable measure, the most sustainable construction material that has ever existed. And the country that put a man on the moon cannot legally build a residential foundation with it. Let me speak plainly here. The American construction industry is not stupid. The engineers know about Roman concrete. The chemists at the major cement manufacturers know about lime clasts. The MIT paper from 2023 is not classified. It is open access on the journal website. What is missing is not knowledge. What is missing is a market incentive to deploy a material that lasts 10 times longer than the one currently sold. This is the same pattern you see with the Edison nickel-iron battery, which holds its charge for a century but was buried by the lithium-ion industry because lithium has to be replaced every 7 years. It is the same pattern you see with the original incandescent bulb that was engineered for 2,500 hours and then deliberately reduced to 1,000 hours by the Phoebus cartel in 1924. The pattern is consistent. The product that lasts is the product that does not get manufactured. And the consumer, meaning you, pays for the same wall 4 times in his lifetime instead of once. But here's the part that most viewers will miss. There is a small movement within American construction that has been quietly bringing lime-based building back. Hempcrete, which combines hemp fibers with hydrated lime, was approved as a non-load-bearing wall and fill in the 2024 International Residential Code, Appendix BL. That is the first official recognition in modern American code that lime-based binders have legitimate building applications. It is a crack in the door. The IRC also approved rammed earth construction in jurisdictions like New Mexico, where stabilized rammed earth walls 18 inches thick are now legal. These walls do not heal themselves like Roman concrete, but they last longer than standard frame construction, and they breathe in a way that prevents moisture damage. The point is that the door is opening, slowly. For now, if you want to build with a true Roman-style hot mixed lime concrete, you need to do it as a non-structural application. Garden walls, retaining walls under 4 feet, restoration work on historic structures, outbuildings in counties that do not enforce code. And there is a 4th category that nobody talks about, repair. Patching cracks in an existing Portland cement foundation with a lime-based mix is legal in every jurisdiction in the United States, because it is repair, not new construction. A Roman-style patch lasts longer than the wall it is patching, which means the cheapest, most durable, most code-legal way to deploy Roman concrete in your house today is to use it as repair material on the walls you already have. Most people do not know this is even an option. The contractors will not bring it up because they sell new pours, not repairs that last centuries. The hardware stores do not stock it as a single product because the ingredients are sold in different aisles. You have to know what to buy and how to combine it. And that is exactly why the documentation exists, not as theory, as a working manual. It tells you the brand of quicklime that produces consistent lime clasts, because not every quicklime sold in the United States is calcined at a temperature high enough for the chemistry to work. It tells you which agricultural suppliers carry the right grade. It tells you the substitute aluminosilicate options ranked by cost and availability in each region of the country. It tells you how to test a batch before you trust it to a structural patch. And it tells you the 3 mistakes that destroy almost every first attempt, because the man who wrote the documentation made all 3. There is one more thing I want to mention before we finish. The reason this knowledge survived is because of monastery libraries. Roman concrete formulas were preserved in manuscript form by Christian monks from the year 500 through the year 1500. The original recipes are written down by Vitruvius, by Pliny the Elder, and by Cato. The knowledge was never lost. It was archived. What happened in the 1900s is that the knowledge was untaught. The new generation of American masons and architects were trained on Portland cement exclusively. By 1950, almost no working contractor in the United States knew how to mix a true Roman concrete. By 2000, even most architecture schools had stopped teaching the chemistry. What MIT did in 2023 was not new science. It was the rediscovery of something that had been openly published in Latin for 1900 years. You can find Vitruvius online for free. The relevant chapters are in Book 2 of De Architectura, written in the 1st century before Christ. He explains the pozzolana sourcing, the mixing ratios, and the curing process in plain language. He does not explain why it works at the molecular level. He did not need to. He explains how to do it. That is enough. And here's the part that should make you stop and think. The most durable construction material ever developed by human civilization has been documented in a book that you can read for free on the internet for the last 20 years. And 99.9% of homeowners have never heard of it. The information is not hidden. It is buried in plain sight by the volume of marketing that promotes the alternative. Every time you see an advertisement for a concrete repair epoxy, that is the alternative. Every time you walk into a hardware store and see 20 types of Portland cement and 0 bags of pozzolana, that is the alternative. Every time a contractor quotes you $14,000 to demo and re-pour a slab that has a hairline crack, that is the alternative. The Roman wall is still there, standing in central Italy, holding up a dome that was built when Hadrian was emperor. It will still be standing when the foundation under your house has been replaced 3 times. If you want to know more about what the industries that profit from your house do not want you to learn, subscribe to the channel. We post new research every week. The next video covers the lime mortar formula that has held together brick buildings in Boston since the 1600s. When the grid fails, knowledge doesn't.